Tonight you are going to pour a drink. You will not think twice about it. You will open a bottle, fill a glass, and swallow something that your body recognizes on a molecular level as a mild poison, and somehow that will feel completely normal. But the story of how you got here is far stranger than you think. It did not begin with a brewery. It did not begin with a winery. It began with a rotting piece of fruit on the forest floor, millions of years before any human being ever walked the earth. And the creature that first tasted it did not spit it out. It came back for more. Your relationship with alcohol is one of the oldest relationships your species has ever had. Older than farming, older than writing, older possibly than language itself. And when you understand how it actually started, the drink in your hand becomes something completely different. So let's go back, all the way back. Imagine a forest, dense, wet, loud with insects. This is roughly 10 million years ago, and the creatures moving through it are your distant ancestors. They are not human, not even close. But they share something with you that turns out to matter enormously. They have a mutated gene. Specifically, they carry a version of the enzyme alcohol dehydrogenase, ADH4, that is approximately 40 times more efficient at breaking down ethanol than the version carried by most other primates. Biologist Matthew Carrigan and his colleagues published research on this in 2015 identifying this exact mutation, and what they found was striking. This genetic change did not appear randomly. It appeared right around the time our ancestors shifted from living in trees to spending more time on the ground. On the ground, overripe and fermenting fruit was everywhere. Fruit that had fallen, fruit that had been sitting in the sun, fruit with a faint, sharp smell and a warmth that spread through the chest. And while most animals avoided it or were quickly overwhelmed by it, your ancestors could metabolize it. They could extract the calories from it. In a world where calories were survival, this was not a flaw. This was an advantage. So your body did not develop a tolerance for alcohol by accident. Your body was shaped over millions of years to handle it. You were not the creature that stumbled upon alcohol and learned to like it. You were, in some sense, built for the encounter. But that is only the beginning. Fast forward to somewhere between 9,000 and 7,000 years ago. The Fertile Crescent, Mesopotamia, the ancient region that stretches across what is now Iraq, Syria, and parts of Turkey. Human beings are beginning to settle. They are planting crops. They are storing grain. And at some point in some clay pot that no one was watching enough, water mixed with grain and wild airborne yeast did something unexpected. It bubbled, it frothed, it changed. When someone drank it, they did not get sick. They got warm, they got loose. They laughed at things that were not funny. They felt briefly like the world was lighter than it actually was. This was not a crisis. This was a revelation. Archaeologist Patrick McGovern, often called the Indiana Jones of ancient beverages, has spent decades analyzing the chemical residues left inside ancient pottery. What he has found again and again is evidence of fermented drinks going back to the earliest. It mimics the feeling of social bonding. It lowers the part of your brain that is always scanning for threats, always calculating risk, always preparing for the worst. For a few hours, it turns off the noise. And for people living in ancient societies where the threat was real and constant, where drought meant death and a bad season meant starvation, that silence was not a luxury, it was a kind of medicine. Ancient Egyptians gave beer to workers building the pyramids, not as a reward, as payment, as a caloric supplement, as a safer alternative to water, which in densely populated settlements was frequently contaminated. Beer was boiled in its production, water was not. Drinking beer, ironically, was often the more rational health decision. The ancient Sumerians had a goddess of beer. Her name was Ninkasi. They wrote her a hymn, not just a passing mention in a longer text, an actual hymn. A song in praise of fermentation written in cuneiform on a clay tablet, describing the process of making beer in careful, reverent detail. You worship what keeps you alive. And so the relationship deepened. What began as a gut reaction to fallen fruit became ritual, became ceremony, became the substance poured at weddings and funerals, became the wine at the center of religious rites, became the thing passed between strangers to signal trust. In culture after culture across every inhabited continent, fermented drinks appeared independently, always performing the same social function. Researcher Cynthia Hastorf at UC Berkeley studied food and drink remains across dozens of ancient sites and concluded that communal drinking was one of the primary tools through which early societies built political alliance, resolved conflict, and cemented group identity. The drink was never just the drink, it was a social technology. Consider what that means the next time you clink glasses with someone you have just met. That gesture, that small ritual, has been performed in some form for thousands of years. It is a signal. It says, I am not a threat. I will let my guard down around you. I trust you enough to alter my own perception in your presence. That is ancient. That is so much older than you. Now here is the part that does not get said often enough. Your ancestors also noticed the other side of it. They noticed that some people could not stop, that the warm looseness curdled over time into something that consumed. Ancient Mesopotamian texts describe people who drank until they forgot their own names. Ancient Greek philosophers argued about where the line was between the gift of Dionysus and his punishment. Every culture that discovered alcohol also eventually developed a language for its destruction. Because the same mutation that made your ancestors efficient at processing ethanol did not make them immune to its pull, it just made them survive it longer. It made the addiction slower and, in that slowness, harder to see coming. Your brain does not know you are living in 2024. It does not know that the fruit on the forest floor has been distilled, bottled, and sold to you at a markup. It only knows the signal. Calories, warmth, the quiet, and it says yes. So tonight, when you pour that drink, you are not doing something casual. You are participating in one of the oldest continuous rituals of your species. You are tasting the same molecular compound that your 10-million-year-old ancestor tasted when it bit into a piece of fallen fruit and felt something shift. The fruit is long gone, but you are still reaching for it.